I'm going to destroy Android. Those were Steve Jobs' exact words. Not compete with, not outperform, destroy. In his biography, Jobs promised to go thermonuclear on anyone who copied the iPhone. And Samsung? Samsung was about to learn what that meant. What followed was 7 years of legal warfare. 50 lawsuits, 10 countries, over $1 billion in claimed damages. This is the complete story of Apple versus Samsung, with the official court documents that reveal how far two tech giants will go. We're going to show you the actual lawsuit filings, the specific patents they fought over, and the final settlement that shook the tech world. January 2007. Steve Jobs walks onto a stage and changes everything. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a statement. Rounded corners, the grid of colorful icons, the smooth scrolling, the pinch to zoom. Apple had spent years perfecting every single detail. And Jobs had something else. Patents. 200 design and utility patents protecting every curve, every gesture, and every pixel of the iPhone experience. He knew exactly what he was building, and he made sure the law protected it. Meanwhile, Samsung saw the future and wanted in. Before the iPhone, Samsung was known for making flip phones and all sorts of different designs. After the iPhone, Samsung made something very familiar. The Galaxy S launched in 2010. Rounded rectangle, a grid of colorful icons, smooth scrolling. Sound familiar? Internal Samsung documents, which were leaked during the trial, showed employees literally comparing features side by side with the iPhone. The instruction from management was clear. Make it more like Apple. April 2011. Apple fires the first shot. The lawsuit claims Samsung slavishly copied the iPhone's design. And they weren't just talking about the technology inside. They meant the entire look and feel. Apple's lawyers presented evidence that was devastating. Samsung's very own internal comparison documents. They showed photos of Galaxy phones right next to iPhones, with arrows pointing to all the similarities. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't inspiration. This was, Apple claimed, theft. Here are the actual patents at the center of this war. First, patent D618-677, which covers the iPhone's iconic rounded rectangle design. Then there's patent D593-087 for the grid of icons on a black background. Now, these weren't complex technical innovations. They were essentially shapes and layouts. And that's exactly what made this case so explosive. Apple was claiming ownership of the very idea of how a modern smartphone should look. The official USPTO filings show exactly what Apple believed they owned, down to the last curve. What started in a California courtroom quickly exploded into a global conflict. An Australian court banned sales of the Galaxy tablet. A court in Germany sided with Apple. In South Korea, unsurprisingly, the courts sided with Samsung. Over in the UK, the judge famously said Apple's lawsuit was not cool. And yes, he literally used those words in his ruling. Japan, the Netherlands, France, every major market became a legal battlefield. Both companies ended up spending over $1 billion just on legal fees. Neither would back down. Neither could afford to. Then, in August 2012, a California jury delivered the most shocking verdict in patent history. Samsung owed Apple $1.05 billion. Not million. Billion for what? For making rectangular phones with rounded corners, for using icon grids, for implementing bouncing scroll animations. The entire tech world gasped. Samsung stock dropped 8% overnight. Apple's lawyers celebrated a massive victory. But the war was far, far from over. The court documents from that verdict reveal the jury's incredible thinking. They actually calculated the damages feature by feature, putting a price tag on each copied element. The rounded corners alone were valued at $39 million. The icon design was worth over $100 million. When you added it all up, the total came to over $1 billion. Samsung, of course, immediately appealed. The case was now heading to the highest court in the land, and it was about to change patent law forever. Samsung's appeal raised a huge fundamental question. If a company copies just the look of a product, should they have to pay the entire profit from selling that product? The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, which was a big deal. It was only the second design patent case they had taken in over a century. Their decision wouldn't just affect Apple and Samsung. It would reshape how design patents work across every industry, from phones to furniture to fashion. The stakes were enormous. December 2016, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously for Samsung. Now, they didn't say Samsung was innocent, but they did say that the billion-dollar damages calculation was completely wrong. You can't claim the profits from the entire phone just for someone copying a few design elements. It would be like suing someone for copying your car's cup holders and then demanding the profit from every car they sold. The case was sent back to the lower courts for recalculation. Apple's billion-dollar victory just got a lot smaller. After 7 long years of fighting, the final number was revealed: $539 million. It's a huge amount of money, but it's not $1 billion. It's not even close. So, Apple technically won the case. But let's look at the bigger picture. Both companies spent over $1 billion on lawyers. Samsung paid Apple $539 million. When you do the math, Apple's victory might have actually cost them money. The court documents show a brutal war where nobody truly came out on top. But here's what makes this story truly bizarre. Throughout this entire 7-year war, who was Apple's biggest parts supplier? Samsung. Samsung makes the brilliant OLED screens for iPhones. Samsung makes the advanced chips that power them. Apple was suing its own manufacturing partner, a company it relied on to build its most important product. And through it all, Samsung kept making the parts and cashing the checks. It seems that even during a thermonuclear war, business is still business. So, who really won? In a way, both did. Apple successfully established that design matters legally. They sent a message to the entire industry. You can't just copy how a product looks and feels. Samsung, on the other hand, learned the rules of the game and then learned how to work around them. Their later phones started looking more and more distinct, developing their own unique identity. Today, nobody confuses a Galaxy phone with an iPhone. Maybe that was the real victory. Both companies are now worth over $2 trillion. The patent war was expensive, but in the end, it was just part of the business. The Apple versus Samsung war teaches us a powerful lesson about innovation. Design matters, details matter, but it also shows us that legal wars are incredibly expensive, unpredictable, and rarely produce clear winners. Steve Jobs got his thermonuclear war. He just didn't live to see how it finally ended. The story shows that sometimes the best business strategy isn't to destroy your competitors. It's to focus on building better products and out-innovating them in the marketplace. Apple and Samsung fought over patents they actually owned and products they actually made. But what happens when companies file lawsuits over patents they have no intention of ever using? They're called patent trolls, companies that produce absolutely nothing but make billions from lawsuits. In our next investigation, we're going to expose how they operate and tell the story of one man who beat them in court 35 times. His story, plus the official court documents that reveal their tactics, are coming next. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it.